Hello and welcome to the This Is Ibrox podcast. I am your host, Ross Chalmers, and this is the post-match reaction to Rangers 1, Ajax 3. Another difficult night at Ibrox for the team, and it's hard to talk about, but we're here to do it. And I've got two guys with me to help me along with that. So first of all, we've got Craig Dennett. Hi, Craig. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm glad we're out the Champions League. Now I'm glad we can just move on from that whole debacle. I'm sure people won't forget it in a hurry, but I'm glad that we'll hopefully have no more nights like this one.
Yeah, it's probably the best way to sum it up. I'd love to leave the pod there. To be honest, that was a good summary of it. But we'll
I've
get
not
Kyle in.
spoken.
Kyle,
That's probably
yeah,
because
I know, I know. Got to bring you in first, of course. Kyle, how are you? How's things?
Honestly, it's been a long time since I've been so emotionally detached from a game of football. It was weird watching that, Craig, wasn't it? At times, to be honest. But yeah, that was the first thing Craig said to me was, "I'm glad that's done." As soon as the final whistle blew, and I can't disagree too much from that, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm very much in the same position, to be honest with you. And yeah, we'll just get right into it. To be honest, I say this all the time. It's probably good to have a wee look at how we were feeling before the game. You've kind of summed up how you were feeling there. I'd imagine you were probably feeling very similar to that before the game, but we'll get into it. Rangers lined up with McGregor in goals. It was Tavernier right back. It was James Sands, Leon King, and Borna Barisic making out the back four. We had Stephen Davis, Scott Arfield, and Malik Thielman in midfield, and Sakala and Kent supporting Cholak up front. We'll start with you, Craig. Any surprises with that lineup?
I mean, did we have any other fit players? Were there's anyone? I mean, potentially Cholak or Morelos are kind of looking. That's the only one really that you're potentially looking at. Could we have done something different there and played Morelos from the start? I'm a big fan of Big Tony goals, so much to your delight, Ross. Big fan of Antonio Cholak, so I think he puts in a power of work that kind of goes unnoticed at times as well. So I didn't have any issues with him starting. Just it's whether Morelos causes more issues for the defence, but um, ultimately that was a bit of a 50-50 call. The midfield, central midfield, was just it is what it is. But the fact we're starting Stephen Davis and Scott Arfield in any game, never mind a Champions League game against Ajax, is massively concerning. And then that's before you even look at the central defensive partnership, which no fault of their own that they've been thrown in there and they're doing a job for us. But it's just you would worry about that in the Scottish Premiership, never mind in a Champions League game against a side of this quality.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you've said. I'm interested in what you think, Kel. I actually think that lineup tonight, I think if you looked at that on paper, you would think that is a lineup that you would maybe see in pre-season for Rangers. Like it's a bit of a second string 11. It looks like we're trying to get players minutes, but it's actually in a Champions League tie at home to Ajax. How did you feel about the lineup? Are you very much the same as Craig? Not any real surprises for you?
Yeah, who else do you pick? I mean, who else do you pick? I mean, I think I joked with Craig about it, at half time, and because he asked me, I know we're skipping ahead here, but he's like, who'd you bring on? What do you change? And I was like, well, I'd like Hollander on at the back, Goldson on at the back. It was just, it's just not going to happen. So that it was necessity that was a lineup that started, and yeah, it was what it was.
Yeah, I think the only thing that surprised me to start with, and I'm curious what you both think when the lineups came out and we've seen the team set up, was that Leon King was on the left of defence and James Sands was on the right. We'll stick with you, Kyle. It's maybe not too big an issue, but I did find it weird considering Leon King has played on that right side for the last couple of games and he's looked pretty comfortable in spells, I suppose. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, again, probably say this quite a lot during this pod, but it was something we talked about, wasn't it, Craig? Because
Yeah.
it just looked a bit odd, and especially given that in previous games, I think Sands and Barisic have had quite a good understanding of each other at times. I think there's been a wee link between the two of them. Some of the plays been nice. the only sort of conclusion that we sort of came to was that it was seniority, and that it's whatever side King was more comfortable playing on. The older player had to, which I think James Sands is 21, which is just kind of mental when you're talking about him being the more senior player in that position. He's played out of position because he's got a couple more years experience. That is the only reason that I can think of it, because it certainly wasn't tactical. Again, because yeah, that's the only thing I could think of why that he was playing there.
Yeah, and from kick-off, we absolutely need to stop giving the ball to Leon King to punt for the opposition team to win a header and to then attack on us. I don't think we've won a single one of those headers that he's kind of launched that ball towards. It's either went out for a throw-in or the opposition team have went on the attack, and we've piled forward with as many forwards as we can to try and win the knockdown. That's a tactic that does not work for us, and I don't know why we continue to persevere with it.
It's always aim for James Tavernier, isn't it? And hope to build on that. But yeah, you're
Sakala for some reason.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it shows the level of our squad as well, because no other team does that at the start of the game. In the Champions League, they all just pass it back and play out, and we just launch that high ball to the right-hand side. Listen, we've done that in most games, to be honest. I've seen us do that in Old Firms and things like that. So I'm not surprised, but I do agree with you. We just don't seem to have the personnel for it right now. So we probably need to try something else. But that's us really picking the fine details of this, and we're avoiding all the big points here. So I'm going to get us into it.
There's plenty more of that to come across, don't you worry.
Okay, we'll start with you then, Craig. In terms of the game, I felt overall, I mean, it was a quick start, obviously, for Ajax with their first goal, but I felt we started okay. I didn't think there was anything too much to worry about, but then Ajax play a lovely ball in behind James Tavernier. Again, that right space behind Tavernier seems to get exploited at this level every single game. The ball gets cut back, and I can't actually remember who finished it. I don't know if it's Kudus or I can't remember who finishes it. Might be, it's Berghaus, isn't it? Takes a bit of a deflection. Leon King kind of faces up and deflects by Alan McGregor. What did you make?
Did it deflect?
I thought it did.
I wasn't sure. I thought from where, because we sat obviously very close to each other.
Yeah.
And I thought, is he giving McGregor the eyes? And McGregor's just gone hook, line, and sinker. I mean, if McGregor stands up, he catches it pretty much from where I'm standing. And if it takes a deflection, then I do apologise. But from where I was sitting, I mean, saying that took a deflection seemed to be very generous.
I may be incorrect there. Just from my angle, I'm right above Al McGregor, so it looked to me that the ball spinned by him. But listen, I'm happy to hold my hands up if that is the case, and we maybe need to criticise McGregor more there. That's fair. Overall, what did you make of the goal? Of course, you can include that in your answer. You maybe think the goalkeeper should have done more if that is the case.
Yeah, we've got Andrew Finlayson coming in the comments saying it did not deflect. I assure you guys.
Okay. So, Andrew, thanks very much. Thank you, because I was obviously trying to protect Al McGregor there, and it's backfired on me. But I apologise. It looked like it from my seat anyway. But okay, I'm guessing McGregor should have done better in that situation.
Yeah, aside from the Al McGregor horror show, I think it was far too easy. It was one ball down the side, one pass into the. It wasn't even really a cross. It was just a pass into the centre of our box. I think it was Leon King was kind of making sure that obviously the guy didn't turn towards goal, but he just laid it back to was it Brickhouse that stuck it away, and he's obviously done Al McGregor. I assume, to give a wee bit of credit to McGregor, he's been done by the eyes kind of thing, but as a professional goalkeeper, he shouldn't really be done by just someone faking in that way or fainting in that way to go one way and go the other as such. So such a disappointing goal to lose, and it just sucked all the energy. It wasn't even that much energy in the stadium to begin with, but it sucked all the energy that was left out of it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, actually, because I did feel the crowd was a wee bit flat before the game tonight. Now, it's totally understandable where we are with this squad, depleted with injuries, and I don't think a lot of people had much confidence going into this game. Kyle, how did you feel about this goal? You can obviously tell me again that I was wrong and that it didn't take a deflection. How did you feel about this?
Honestly, opposition goals, I honestly don't tend to remember them too much. I can talk about how I felt after it in terms of like I was just so disappointed. Like we were just, I know we've been battered for top to toe in the Champions League, and I think a lot of the supporters were just expecting, right, it's the last game, let's go out, bit of fight, bit of effort, let's see how we got on, and then just to lose just such a poor goal. Like that it's so earlier on, as you said, it just Ibrox was flat and on a Champions League night, which is incredible. There was nothing to play for really, and yeah, it was so disappointing. It just took the wind right out of our sails losing a goal that early on.
Yeah, I have to agree, especially with the fans. I felt it definitely took the wind out of our sails as fans. I would say that I felt the team reacted quite well to the goal. Around the kind of 13th minute, I have here that Bassey clears one off the line. I think it's from the Sakala header. I think it's good work from Kent down the left-hand side. He crosses it to the back post. Sakala gets up well. And we'll stick with you in this, Colin Kyle. It just has to be Calvin Bassey clearing the ball off the line, doesn't it? Just to add insult to injury, really, of where we are right now, that he is the man clearing things off the line. What did you make of that chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was you that sort of said it in the chat. It was weird seeing Big Bassey at Ibrox tonight again, wasn't it? It was like I think you summed it up quite well in terms of calling him like an ex-girlfriend that you kind of want to see how she's getting on, but you don't really want to look. So nice to see him in that regards. But yeah, it was actually a good effort by Sakala. Did well to win the ball, win the header, got up high, and yeah, it was just typical that it was Calvin Bassey, but that's exactly why they paid 20 odd million euros for him for clearances like that. And he's a good defender, and yeah, ultimately it was a good clearance. You'd be chuffed to bits if he was doing that for your team.
Just on Calvin Bassey, I do think he looked like their weak link in their defence. For all that they paid 20 odd million for him and that we love him and he did us an absolute turn last year. I do think that he looked their weak link in the defence, and that had we tried to capitalise on that more, and potentially had we been smarter with the press, we could have potentially gotten more change out of their defence than we already did, because we got a few chances off the back of their defence making some mistakes. But I think Bassey was kind of sticking out a wee bit in that team in terms of how likely he was to give the ball away, or how likely he was to present us with a chance at least. A few times when he took it past Alfredo Morelos, particularly later on in the game, where you thought, yeah, we could have had a chance or two out of that one, but it's probably been a bit harsh on the big guy. He's still a good player, but he doesn't look quite as comfortable in that Ajax team as he did in the Rangers team.
Certainly doesn't look as comfortable in the ball, does he? I thought that as well tonight, and he was the one that was being asked to start things for the build up for them a lot, and he just didn't look comfortable with us. I felt he had that kind of license to drive out with the ball, and it didn't so much rely on his passing ability. It was more his energy and how good he was carrying the ball. But tonight it was more about playing out, and he just didn't look as comfortable. Saying that, he's next to a guy in Julian Timber who is, he's been linked with top clubs like Manchester United lots of times. So he probably sticks out because of the level he's playing at now, which is completely fair. Well, I'll come back to you then, Kyle, before we move on. What did you make of Bassey? I'm interested in your opinion, of course. We're at an early part of the game, but did you feel he stuck out, or how did you feel he got on coming back to Ibrox?
Well, at least we know who's been writing all those negative articles for the Daily Record now, I suppose, don't we? But I'm maybe not quite in the. I think it's harsh calling Calvin Bassey the weak link in the Ajax squad. I mean, I do take Craig's point to an extent in terms of. I think that's a conversation for later on in the podcast about how we were applying our press at times. But it just everybody in their team it was evident they are levels above us, and that is something that I am. And I think Craig knows this. I'm really struggling with this. Is some of the effort from our players I wasn't happy with, but then they're so good. Can you really level that against our players? But to go back to your point about Calvin Bassey, I thought he was good tonight. I don't know if he was fully fully trying against us. You never want to level that accusation at a professional football player, but there was a couple of times I thought he could have played a wee quicker ball there. He could have played a ball over the top. But I don't think that was Calvin Bassey going full pelt tonight. But yeah, for me in that Ajax team, he looks ready. He looks of a similar standard to some of the players that are in that team.
I don't think there's any way that he wasn't going full pelt. I don't think there's any, never in a million years is he getting that ball and thinking, "Oh wait, it's Rangers. I'll just not play that pass." I mean, right? In what world is that actually going to happen? And even an amateur football game, never mind a professional setting. And then in the Champions League, there's no chance that's going to happen.
Listen, we need all the help we can get right now. Okay, we're going to take that one. He was trying to help us out, Bassey. What a great guy. Anyway, we'll move on. There's enough Calvin Bassey love in there. So I'll let you come back at this. I'll stick with you in this one, Kel. I felt again in the next period of the game, right up until Ajax probably scored around the 29th minute, I felt we were okay. I didn't think Ajax were really doing too well in possession. Weren't really carving us open or anything. I think they had a couple of corners, but didn't make anything of them. And then they score in the 29th minute. It's a ball in behind again, Tavernier. I think it's Vindal gets to the byline, he slides, cuts the ball back to Kudos. Bit of a weird situation here where he faces James Sands up, I think, and it's like a bit of a standoff in the box. It's so close to goal. He moves the ball onto his right foot and yeah, he finishes. What did you make of this one, Kyle? Or how did you feel in this moment is maybe the best way to ask you about this.
Just totally scunnered again. Like it was so easy at times. And again, who do you level the criticism at here? Is it Tav? Could he have done a bit better? I felt like at times it's clear he's not fit. And again, I know we've touched on it in previous podcasts. Is it down to that, or is he just a bit off it? I felt he could have maybe done a wee bit better in that instance. Sands, yeah, he did. He does what a defender's supposed to do: stand up, try and show him the outside. But the quality of that guy was just too good, and it was another good finish at the end of the day. That's what we're up against in the Champions League. It's just, again, I said it to Craig, and I know that we've mentioned it in pods before. When the Ajax manager is coming out and saying we can't compete at this level, how are Rangers meant to compete at this level? But in terms of the goal, it was another really disappointing goal to lose, and you can find fault in the players, but ultimately I just think at this point Ajax's quality and confidence shone through.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that period of the game we were a wee bit shaky. I think it was the period when Leon King tried to play a cross-field pass to Tavernier and it got caught out short. And Ajax didn't manage to make anything of that. We went to play quickly out to our field and he tried to flick it to Davis, I think, and it's broke down. And from that, Ajax have scored. So it's at that level, I think, where mistakes like that are just punished so quickly. You know, we just don't get that in domestic football. And these players have just not been, they've had 6 games and they've just not been able to adapt to that. But Craig, what did you make of this goal? I seen you shaking your head there when I mentioned that cross-field pass from Leon King. That kind of started off that pressure for Ajax and we just struggled to get out. What did you make of that one?
I'm trying to decide whether now is the time to broach the Leon King subject or if I'll leave that for a little bit later. But of the goal, it was, again, too easy. I think James Tavernier, and I love James Tavernier, well behind the he's a Rangers legend campaign as such. I know some of the older guys don't think he is or doesn't meet the criteria, but I think he's definitely done enough. The only question marks maybe over enough trophies and stuff like that. But have we forgotten that he struggles to defend? He struggles to defend in the Scottish Premiership. He struggles to defend in the Europa League. He had a pretty good season last year. That was kind of, we forgot about the defensive side of stuff because he was the record goal scorer in the Europa League. But he's always struggled to defend, and if he doesn't have that assistance from his centre half, he doesn't have that assistance from the guy who's playing wide right, then he's going to get found out. And that's not all his fault. Part of that's the team set up, and part of that's the understanding he has. When Goldson's there, 9 times out of 10 he gets away with mistakes because Goldson knows where he's going to be. Goldson's covering for him, and Tav's able to push up a bit higher because of that. When you've got obviously he was beside James Sands tonight, and I think that's potentially where we were found out a bit with that, because James Sands isn't naturally just moving over and covering that space that Goldson does. I don't think James Sands quite has the pace that Goldson does either, in terms of being able to get across, and just that defensive acumen, for want of a better phrase, in terms of just understanding the shape and how it should move. But I think it's too easy in behind James Tavernier. Ball comes in, like you say, it's a weird kind of standoff kind of moment that everything just seemed to stand still 10 yards from our goal. Obviously Kudus is just waiting for James Sands to make a move one way or another, and he'll go the other way. He shoots, I think it hits off Leon King, if I'm right. I think Leon King kind of, fair play, doesn't turn his back, but it hits off his chest or his side and kind of just diverts it into the bottom corner. I think Kudus is a tremendous player. I think we've seen this group stage how good a player he is, and I said to Kyle during the game, Kyle was getting frustrated that the fact that Leon King and James Sands were struggling to sort of face up to some of the attacks that Ajax had, and it's like, well, it is James Sands and Leon King. At the end of the day, it's not our first choice central defensive partner. Even our first choice central defensive partnership would struggle against Ajax. When you've gone so far down the roster, you're playing the youngest guy in the first team squad and a central midfielder at centre half. So you get 21-year-old and 18-year-old. You're on a hiding to nothing. And when we were coming into the game, I knew that. So I don't know if I'd mentally prepared myself for it going badly from the start. But it was just, I think there's a multitude of errors and there's a multitude of questions and a multitude of what ifs had we not had 13 injuries or 14 injuries or however many we have.
I think you made some great points here. I think it's probably fair to say that Leon King and James Sands maybe wouldn't make the matchday squad for that Champions League game if we had a fully fit squad. I think that is completely fair to say. And that's not a detriment to those players and their ability, but I think it's just the case. Leon King is 18 and James Sands 21, and he's a holding midfielder. We've got plenty of holding midfielders. So, the fact that the two of them are playing at centre half it's going to always be a challenge for them. It's going to be difficult. It's just a level too high, and I think we've seen that again tonight.
Just on that, Ross, and I will do the Leon King discussion just now, and I'll keep an eye on the comments just for a bit of fun. But I think we saw at the weekend that Leon King isn't up to playing against some of the better teams in the Scottish Premiership yet. And I think some people think he's immune from criticism because he's an 18-year-old and he's come through our youth system, but ultimately he's playing as centre half for Rangers. He needs to be, if he's going to be playing that position, he needs to be able to stand up to the strong physical players that you see in the Scottish Premiership, and he really struggled against is it Duke from Aberdeen. He really struggled against him. I think you were the one that said to me, Ross, he's too aggressive at times. He gets too close to his man, but then at other times he steps off too far, and he's not got that judgment right at all. I think currently I don't think he starts at centre half for a Hibs or a Hearts. So the fact he's starting for us in a Champions League game is just a sign of how much we're struggling with injuries, but it's also leaving questions to be asked.
I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, Kyle, because it's something that, and I don't want this to turn into a Leon King bashing, because that's definitely not the pod we want here, but it was something I mentioned on the post-match against Aberdeen at the weekend, and I felt he did struggle 1v1 with Duke, and I think you've just seen it a few times these last few games that he struggles with a few things, but it's totally natural. He's only 18, and I think Craig's made a great point. He shouldn't be playing for us yet, but he's been chucked in. It's difficult for him. What do you think of Leon King so far, Kyle? are you with me a wee bit that you feel he's got things to improve on? I don't necessarily agree with Craig that he maybe wouldn't play for Hibs and Hearts, but listen, it's all about opinions here. What do you think? How do you feel on Leon King?
Difficult. It's a really difficult one to talk about Leon King, to be honest with you. It's from my point of view, he's obviously not a first team starter. That goes without saying. But by the same token, Gio said he's good enough. And Gio has repeatedly said if you're good enough, you'll play. Okay, it's circumstantial that he's in this team at the moment. But then again, I also agree with you, Ross, in terms of he has a lot to learn. I think that's an excellent point. He's far too tight sometimes and he lets people roll. But then again, can you criticise him for that too much? Not really, because he's 18 and he's playing against top quality in the Champions League. I mean, as a supporter, you're emotional, you're involved in it. And it's difficult not to criticise sometimes when you're in Ibrox and in that atmosphere. Every supporter being disappointed and being quite harsh on the team. But taking a step back from it, I think for an 18-year-old, he has done relatively well. The fact that we've had links coming out with. I think there was some Premier League clubs linked to watched him. I think Newcastle and a couple other ones. That always stands me in good stead. Now, I'm no means saying that he'll go down to Newcastle and start in the Newcastle team before you pipe up, Dennett. But he's certainly one to watch, and certainly one I would be keeping around the club for the next 2 years. And if you're looking at guys I'm trying to think of guys that have played centre half for us around about that age in recent times. For me, I think he at this stage he's on maybe a par with Danny Wilson. I'm looking at. I think he's certainly better than Ross McCrory playing at centre half. But by that same token, what Danny Wilson had that Leon King doesn't have is Davy Weir beside him, talking him through games, coaching him through games. I think the best that we've seen of Leon King is when Connor Goldson's been his centre half partner, because as important a leadership role as Goldson's had, I think he has been fantastic at mentoring some of the youngsters through, and I would very much put Leon King in that category.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, honestly, about Connor Goldson. I think he's crucial to not just this team, but anyone playing next to them in their development. I think he's crucial. And listen, I think we'll all look back in this in a year's time. I truly believe this. We'll look back in this in a year's time and we'll think this done Leon King good, and he'll be twice the player he is now. I genuinely believe that. So it's all good. But Craig, you've got something to say before we move on.
Yeah, I don't think, and I know he's in there by necessity, but I don't think now, especially given how poorly we've been performing despite getting results getting domestic results, I don't think now is the time when we can afford to have someone learning, especially with the number of injuries, and like you say, Connor Goldson not being in it. I think throwing him in at the deep end isn't doing him any good. People will jump to his defence. There's quite a lot of people jumping to his defence in the comments. Curry Muncher, which is still a great name, says, Craig, who was better in defence tonight? Our captain Tav, Borna Barisic or Sands? Really, none of them. None of them were good in any sense. James Sands, I think, started off quite well, and I quite like James Sands when he's on the ball and he's moving forward and he's progressing. He was much better at the weekend when he was in that central defensive mid role. I thought he was really suited to that, and he progressed the ball really well, and he was always looking forward, and his passing was accurate, and he covered the ground well defensively as well. So I think in that defensive midfield role, he's got a shout of being in our team. In defence, he does not. And I guess the question then is, do you pay $5 million for James Sands at the end of this year? Probably not. He's a good player, but I think you can get better players for £5 million.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think the board will probably wait until the end of the season before they make any of these decisions. Probably as they should. We are allowed as fans to speculate and say whether we would or not right now. But I think the board will obviously. I can't see the money being put away for that just yet. But we'll move on. That was a good chat about Leon King, and I can see that a lot of people disagree with maybe what we've said there about Leon King, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. That's the beauty of this. So we'll move on. I've got a couple of notes here, just moving on to kind of half time. And I'll come back to you on this one, Kyle. I felt that Ajax really made, the second half of the first half a bit of a training exercise. Like, they really started to ping the ball about and we could not get near them. Even really trying to be aggressive, we couldn't get close to them. And I've got a note here around the 45th minute. They cut us open. It was a break, and they probably should have made it 3. I think it deflected by the post. They dragged it wide. Could have dragged it wide, I believe. I can't really remember. What did you feel at half time, Kyle, about that kind of first half performance? I've got noted here, outclassed. Didn't feel that Ajax got out of second gear. Felt we were kind of all over the place defensively. What did you make of it?
Well, that's the key phrase in that whole thing is Ajax didn't get out of second gear. They were that was humbling tonight for Rangers, just to show how big that gulf in class that the managers talked about before, and they were toying with us at points. If you're looking at that from a neutral point of view, and you're flicking through the Champions League games, and you're going, oh, Ajax are playing, like we'll be doing tomorrow night when we're watching the Champions League. And that's what I do. If you different games on, you flick through, you would look at it and go, Ajax are playing some nice football there. But it's just, like some of the off the ball stuff from, and Craig will attest to this, I was really annoyed at Kent at points, because I just felt like he wasn't tracking back, wasn't putting, for me, enough effort that you should be putting into the Champions League. I mean, this is a guy whose contract's running down. I think we're all pretty much in agreement. He's looking to be moving away from the squad at some point. Surely this is the perfect shot window to put yourself in. I would expect guys like Kent, especially in that first half, to just put a bit more effort into to just try and give us something, because there was nothing really in that first half other than that Sakala header that really got supporters off their seats. And again, I'm conflicted, because I can understand why people booed at halftime, but I feel it's a bit harsh when you're up against that level of opposition.
Yeah, Ross,
yeah.
Just come in and the Ryan.
Yeah,
Kent.
cool.
So me and Kyle disagreed quite a bit during the game as to how much Ryan Kent had actually offered going forward. I think we were all in agreement as to how little he offered defensively, and we were talking before we came live, Ross, about that as well. And I think going forward, I think the first 10-15 minutes he actually beat his man 2 or 3 times, and he managed to get some decent balls across to the back post. I'm still confused as to why we keep hanging balls up as though we've got 3 or 4 6'2" people coming in to smash the ball into the back of the net with their head. I mean, if we're lucky, Antonio Cholak will get on the end of it, but he doesn't seem to. The balls don't seem to be played into the areas that he's kind of occupying. But I think Ryan Kent defensively, and it's part of the reason why I think people got on Borna Barisic's back as well, unfairly, because he's left exposed a lot by Ryan Kent. Ryan Kent does a lot of the work so people will see Ryan Kent in the area roughly where he should be. They will see him in that defensive full-back area and roughly where he should be. But he's not marking a man. He's not occupying a space that the opposition might move into. He's completely lost track of where his man has gone. He's not only lost track of where his man has gone, he doesn't shout to his teammates to say, I've lost him, you need to pick him up, or anything like that. There was one point, I think it would have been towards the end of the first half, where Kent lost his man. Tillman then picked him up just naturally because Tillman was in that position. Tillman then lost him. Borna Barisic is pointing down the line, knowing there's a runner, and then the boy just gets to the byline with no pressure on him and crosses in. It's like, we need to communicate more, but I think Ryan Kent flatters to deceive defensively. He gets in the right positions in terms of where he should be on the pitch, but he doesn't look after his man and he doesn't take that responsibility, and I think that's a real issue.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think both Ryan Kent and I think Malik Tillman tonight And I thought Michael Thielman he's definitely getting better in that kind of defensive work rate. I don't know if you both think the same as me, but he's definitely starting to put the kind of graft in there. But both of them, it's difficult because you are playing at this level and these players are going to make intelligent runs and it is going to be difficult to track them. But when you are playing at this level, you have to try your best to be switched on to these runs. And both of them were getting back into defensive areas, but completely switching off when the player was making the running behind them. And like you said, that chance, I remember that chance when they got to the byline, I thought they'll score here because they've got an overload. Luckily, they didn't. But yeah, I totally agree. We'll move on into the second half then. I mean, I had a halftime here just saying, just keep it respectable. That probably shows where my mind was at that point about this game and just how comfortable Ajax were and the later half of the first half there. But this is something I wanted to pick up on. I'll stick with you in this, Craig, because I think I wrote this in the chat of the game. Now, we don't need to dive too deep into this because I'm aware of, you know, we want to get off at some point tonight. But I thought the way we pressed Ajax tonight was very strange. We pushed them high up the park, but our front players weren't aggressive in pressing at all. And they were just able to it was literally like watching a training exercise. They were just able to pass it through us every time and they were into midfield. And they done it about 5 times. And I've got it here at the 53rd minute. I've noted it down because I'd watched it the whole first half and I couldn't believe it was still happening. Did you find our kind of approach tonight from a defensive point of view weird or am I maybe mistaken in that? Like, how did you feel about that?
I think we played completely into Ajax's hands and how they want you to play. But I don't think we have the players to press it any other way. So I think at times when we've potentially been more successful with the press. I think, for example, the first half against Liverpool at Ibrox, I thought we actually pressed them really well. We saw some weaknesses and some flaws in their defensive ability, or the fact that their defence would potentially give us some chances. And I think in that first half against Liverpool, we capitalised on that quite well, and we put them under pressure, and that worked. Against Ajax, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place because the way that Ajax have played since the 70s or whenever it was that the total football stuff started, the way Ajax played, they want you to press them to an extent because they know if one guy goes towards them, they have at least 2 options that they can pass the ball to. So if you press them from the right-hand side, they'll have someone on the left-hand side they just pass the ball to, and then they pass it around you and they're away. And that's what they wanted, and we were doing exactly what they wanted. They were giving the ball to Bassey, or they were giving the ball to was it Timber, the other centre half, and they were literally just waiting on someone taking 3 or 4 steps towards them, and then they played a little triangle and they were away. And I think it was Edson Alvarez, who's a really dirty player actually. Fair play to Reese for predicting a yellow card for Edson Alvarez. It took about 5 minutes or something like that in the game. I think that we played the way they wanted us to play and just played completely into their hands. Do I think we could have changed how we pressed? Not really, because I think you saw Morelos just after he came on. He felt like he was a one-man pressing machine effectively in terms of the team weren't going with him, and he was desperate for the team to come with him. You're kind of between a rock and a hard place because we know how much we can get picked and how easily we can get picked off if we open up. So the defensive unit and that back 5 and then the 4 in front of them, they'll be scared to push too high up the park because they know the pace Ajax have, because they know the quality they have to find the attacking players. And so effectively it did look sometimes like the front 3, if you say Kent, Cholak and Sakala at times were pressing, but Ajax were just playing through them, and then they had 2 banks of players that they were then attacking against in our half, and it seemed far too easy.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I've noticed Kareem Unsure in the comments here asking about kind of subs at half time. So I'll include that in your question, Kyle, just regarding, obviously I've spoke about the press there, but just in general, like I felt we should have changed that. Now, I agree. Craig's points are perfectly valid. Personally, I would have probably just asked the team to sit back a wee bit. I didn't feel we were getting any joy in trying to play through Ajax, so maybe just try and get some space in behind them for Sir Callum Kent might have been something to try. But did you think there was anything we could have changed at halftime, Kyle? I mean, did you expect any subs? I know there's comments asking about subs at halftime. Is that something you would have looked at? Would you have changed anything?
So if you're asking me if I expected subs, the answer is no, because the only game that I can remember, in fact, I don't even know if Gio's made a sub. Maybe one game at halftime.
Scott Wright always seems to come off at halftime. He always seems to get hooked.
To be fair, Gio has apparently made more subs at halftime than Steven Gerrard did in his whole time with Rangers.
Wow.
I didn't know that. Well, there you go. The expectation for Gio is not to make subs. But no, I wasn't surprised that anybody would have come on. Would have changed it? It's a tough question. My opinion is if I could have brought maybe Morelos or whatever on quicker, knowing what I knew about the second half. So my opinion on the press is slightly different. I think I'm all for that high press. I've said it before. I think it suits a couple of our players. I think Tillman sits well in the high press, but I think there was, and I hate to go back to Kent. You need 4 people pressing like that when you're doing the press, and on that left side there was always a man free, always spare. Tillman, Sakala, and Cholak, who was running about like a headless chicken up front at times, they were really pressing, but they didn't do it. Is it a coincidence that our 2 best chances of the game, the Morelos one, which was a sitter by the way, and the Matondo goal, come from players running at them going into the box? So yes, with hindsight, I think Curry Munch has a point in terms of we could have brought Alfredo Morelos on and maybe looked to have got something out of the game a wee bit earlier. But again, I realise, honestly, I feel like I'm going to be picking the splinters out my backside after this podcast, but you've got to balance that up with, if we press that high, you saw it again, and as I said, they were in second gear for most of that game, Ajax. You saw it, as soon as they turned it on, they cut us open like a hot knife through butter. So it's a balance, but I wasn't surprised at all that there was no changes made at half-time.
I think what you said about there, cutting through us, I think we'll get to it, but their third goal is the perfect example of that. We've just scored and they just absolutely killed the game. But we'll get to that. I'll kind of summarise some of the second half here, and we'll take us up to the kind of interesting points, because I felt it was a bit of a no contest that second half. Again, bit of a training exercise. Ajax did score a third, but it was ruled out for offside. And for me, from my angle, don't know about you two, but I didn't think it was offside. Obviously, it will be because of VAR, but at the time, I just thought, oh, well, that's it, done. But thankfully, VAR saved us there. We made a triple sub at the 59th minute. It was Tillman, Cholak, and Davis came off for Scott Wright, Morelos, and Kamara. We decided to play Scott Wright as a number 10, which is a strange decision. I'll maybe let you come in on that, Kyle, because I think you said in the chat that you thought Scott Wright was a fantastic player, but you didn't understand why he was in that kind of number 10 position. How did you feel at that change?
That was me being extremely sarcastic. I don't even think Scott Wright is not a decent player on the wing, never mind at number 10. He doesn't have that composure. He's not got the technical ability to play in that role. Malik Tillman is okay. I know he's faced a lot of criticism with his work rate, but he's got the technical ability to find that pass and the intelligence to do it. Ironically enough, I bet you Craig's going to slate me later on, because I think it might have been Scott Wright that had the assist for the goal, or for the penalty. But we'll keep that quiet. But yeah, just I fully expected them to be on the wings. That one playing at number 10 was just odd. But again, it's who else to be playing that position? if who else to be having the bench? Lowry maybe. I think we did see him, but I think the 10-minute cameo or whatever it was that he got at the end, that was the medical team have said that's all he can manage.
I think that Scott Wright change came across to me as just protecting players for the weekend, like bring Malik Tillman off and just get Scott Wright on. Like the game's done, we'll just protect the player. But how did you feel about not just necessarily those changes? I don't want this to turn into a Scott Wright bashing. I'm sure a lot of people would want to hear that, but I thought he did. It wasn't great when he came on, right? But I just don't think he is anywhere near that level, right? He shouldn't be in a Champions League fixture, in my opinion. But what did you make of those changes, Craig? Did you think, like me, that they were just about protecting players, or did you feel that Van Bronckhorst was trying to get back in the game? How did you feel about them?
I'll come back to that in a second. Just on the disallowed goal, or the VAR disallowed goal that Ajax had, that brought about a weird phenomenon that I hadn't really noticed at Ibrox, but it might become more regular. Hopefully not. When people thought we'd conceded the third goal, there was a good few hundred people that threw their seats up in disgust and left. And then there was probably about 10 or 15 that crawled their way back up the stairs as soon as they saw it was disallowed. And it didn't go unnoticed amongst the fans around me anyway, and that saw them sort of crawling back up the stairs. I've always been a stay to the end of the game kind of person. I hate leaving early, and I don't understand why people do leave early. But yeah, that was a more dramatic way of that happening than I thought I'd see at Ibrox. I think in terms of the changes, I was like you. I think that this just looks like we're protecting key players, mainly Tillman and Cholak. To be fair, I don't think Steve Davis will be a key player this weekend. So hopefully not. Anyway, I think Steve Davis is. I think Kyle asked, "Is Steve Davis now officially past it?" During the game, I think Steve Davis is past it stage. To be honest, I think he's just definitely beyond this level, but I think he's even beyond the SPFL level, Premiership level. To be fair, so I thought he was very much protecting Cholak and Tillman for the weekend. And Scott Wright, I actually don't mind him when he's out wide right. I think Fashion Sakala is the better option on the right at the moment. He's the best of a bad bunch, probably, Fashion Sakala. I hadn't really considered Scott Wright playing that number 10 role before. He looked to keep trying to make that run in behind, which no one was willing to play the pass over the top for. To see he did 2 or 3 times. I pointed out to Kyle that he was making the run, but no one was playing the pass. I think our midfield was criminal in the lack of accuracy of passing, not only tonight but throughout this whole Champions League group stage. And I think we've lost the ball and lost so many goals because we've lost the ball cheaply in midfield, likely in our own half as well, and it's not given our defence enough time to recover. And I think it's absolutely criminal to do that at that level.
It's been a bit of a lesson, hasn't it? It's been a lesson for this squad. And I actually thought it during the game tonight, this is a lesson for these guys. But listen, a lot of these guys probably won't be at Rangers next season, to be honest with you. Or they certainly won't be starting games. So, I don't think Stephen Davis is getting any lessons out of tonight. He's played at this level before. So maybe that statement's redundant, to be honest. But we'll move on. I'll summarise the rest of the game. We had a chance in the 69th minute. It was a good ball in from Ryan Kent. It was a knockdown from Tavernier into the 6-yard box and no one was there. And again, it was one of those moments, and I don't know if you both agree with me, but I just thought if Cholak's there, we score. I always seem to have that kind of comparison between Morelos and Cholak now, where I just think, he would be instinctive there and he would be in there. That's maybe been harsh, to be honest, but that's just the way my brain went. I've got a note here about Tavernier going down the 71st minute. I've seen a lot on social media criticising the manager around this point, that he was limping for a good 10 minutes after that and just wasn't taking off. I have to be honest, I didn't notice that myself. I thought he looked okay once he'd got up. I just didn't notice, but I might be wrong in that. We can maybe come back to that at the end of the game. Sorry, Craig, sorry.
I definitely noticed that, and there was a few people around us as well. It got to about the 80th minute. It got to just before the penalty, actually. And people were like, why is he still on the park? You've got Adam Devine, fair enough. I kind of thought maybe Gio's just scared to make any kind of change that potentially weakens us, because we know how clinical teams can be at this level. We saw with Liverpool quickly a score can rack up, and the last thing you'll want is for another last 10, 15 minutes cricket score kind of thing. And I kind of got that, but James Tavernier was clearly limping the whole time. He was clearly in discomfort. I was really surprised they stayed on till the end.
Listen, can I step in and say that? I would
of course.
go as far to say as that was potentially negligent from the manager doing that. That could really, really hamper our season. For that game, 20 minutes to go in the Champions League, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. He has to be taken off and risk assessed in that point. I mean, because the argument is you can't say you don't want to put Adam Devine on because he's got a slot, in case they get slaughtered and his confidence is low or whatever. But he put Lowry on and stuff like that, so that negates that argument for me. That could have been stupid, and I'm half fearing in the next press conference for the game at the weekend that Gio comes out and says Tav can't play because he's got an injury. Well, I wonder if we'll finally come out and admit that he actually is playing injured. But that was so stupid. Like there's no other word for it. Like he should have been off the pitch and rested.
Yeah, I think that's probably what we're going to find out eventually, to be honest, about Tavernier, that he is injured. I just believe he is now. I know they've come out numerous times and saying he's not, but I don't know. That looked like an impact one tonight. And I have to say, I didn't really notice it myself, but I have read it in several places, and both of you have felt that he should have been taken off. So again, I'm not going to protect the manager in this because I felt that we done that with Morelos last season. He went down against Red Star away from home with a thigh injury, and we played him away at Dundee that weekend, and eventually broke down and we lost him for the season. So I'm not going to protect the manager in that, and if that's the case, he should have been taken off. Then that's a poor decision again. We'll just skim by this one because I don't think we need to talk about this one. This just sums Alfredo Morelos up right now. It's the 84th minute. He seems to rob the keeper of the ball. The keeper panics, kind of falls, and Morelos at the same time panics. Takes a bit of a slash at the ball, and he hits it wide, an open goal. Guys, I'll go to you in this, Craig. What has happened to Alfredo Morelos? What's happened to
him? He's heavier than he should be. I think when you have that awareness that he's put on weight when he's been injured and stuff like that, and I think generally you can see it in him. But I think what shows it most is, see, when you look back at the Europa League goals from the last couple of seasons and whatever, and you see him celebrating, and you see him scoring goals like when he scored against Feyenoord and things like that, and he was scoring against Porto, and you see how lean he looks compared to how he looks now. It actually shows how drastic the difference is between then and now, and actually how unfit he looks at the moment. I'd be interested in, he's obviously already been called out in his attitude so far this year. If he was left out of that match day squad by Gio, I think his attitude when things aren't going his way can always be questioned, and is always questionable. And I think the fact he's been on the bench for so much of the time, obviously, when he was out injured at the start of the season, we all fully expected him as soon as he came back into the fold, he would just automatically start. Now, 20 goals has been a big. I'm going to persevere with that, Ross. Big 20 goals has been a revelation this season, and thank God he has been, because he's made such a difference, and I dread to think where we'd be without him at this point. But Alfredo Morelos just doesn't seem on it physically, doesn't seem on it mentally, and just that chance just summed it up.
I kind of agree with everything you said there. It's hard to disagree with anything. It's only a minute later though that we get the penalty, and this is obviously Van Bronckhorst's masterclass. This is why he's kept James Tavernier on the pitch, because he steps up and scores. I felt, and we'll come to you in this, Kyle, I felt the penalty looked soft. Not going to lie, just looked like he came across. It's one of those ones where I always think the defender's going to just try and shield it out. And I don't know if maybe there's been a clip of the foot or something at the same time. What did you make of the penalty? Clear penalty for you?
Yeah, Stonewall. I think for me, I think we're going to have to check your seats out, by the way, at Ibrox, Ross, because you're missing an awful lot here.
Yeah. It's always one of those ones, I think, where both players are moving at high speed, and I just think any touch is maybe going to make the player fall. So I always think, is it enough for a penalty? But listen, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm being objective. I'm just trying to be fair.
I'm just messing, but like in all seriousness, I do think this was a fairly clear-cut penalty. It's what is, when you're learning how to play football, it's whenever you're attacking, it's what you're told: run across the defender, and any contact you're going to go down. I mean, that's the thing about Matondo. He's obviously rapid, but he's very lightweight. So any contact that was going on, for me, it was a decision that the referee got right. The fact that he didn't even need to go to VAR to it, straight to the penalty spot, and ultimately, compared to the one that Tav took at the weekend, this one was dispatched quite well. Although I think everybody else round about me was off their seats, I just kind of sat down, and I hate watching penalties and just. Even though it was a nothing penalty, that in the grand scheme of things meant nothing other than that I've seen Rangers score 2 Champions League goals this year. It was a good penalty. Interestingly enough, I think it would have been interesting to see Sakala and Matondo start. I mean, he's never not going to start Ryan Kent, but see that, just the fact that we had such pace in the wings. And again, it's difficult out of context because of Ajax kind of totally taking the foot off the gas here. But I think that really worked against them, was having 2 pacey wingers on the left and the right. I think they struggled to cope with that at times.
Yeah, I think Matondo is. I mean, I think we can all agree in this that Sakala has really grabbed that right wing position in the last couple of games. He's really proved that it's now his opportunity. But I think any time that Matondo's played on the left, he's looked a completely different player. He just looks so much more comfortable. And listen, we maybe are at that point that Ryan Kent needs more competition. I'm not saying he should be dropped, right? But he needs to feel like someone's right behind him for that place. And at the moment, I think it doesn't matter what Ryan Kent does. He's going to play the next week, which is, it's not a good precedent to set for the squad, in my opinion. But we'll finalise this game. I have to say this goal really, I'm going to stick with you on this one, Kyle, because I think Craig's he's had the real negative ones here, so I'm going to let you be really negative here. I was really upset about this goal because we just get back in the game, and I just wanted to see the team manage it a wee bit better. We actually robbed Ajax of possession halfway into their half. Scott Wright wins it. He flicks it to Lowry. Now, again, not going to be too critical. Young boy coming on. He's not been playing often, but he plays a risky ball in towards Wright. It's picked up. It's given to Tadic, and the pass from Tadic is a joke. Like, really just shows the level here. I mean, he's hit it with the inside of his foot, and he's curled it round, and it's perfect. And it's a great finish. I actually can't say his name. Conceição, I think they bought him from Porto this summer. He cuts back onto his left foot, slots it left-hand corner. What did you make of this goal, Kyle? You gutted me at this one. I couldn't believe this one.
Yeah, it was really, really disappointing. This, I said I just had a wee quick look there when you were talking, because I didn't actually know how long it was. 2 minutes it was between our penalty and that goal going in. I mean, again, I'm rolling out some of the cliches tonight, but you're at your most, or the opposition's at the most dangerous, when you scored, and that proved to be the case. But again, I think that was our Champions League campaign in microcosm, that goal, in terms of there was just a totally switched off, total lack of effort, and ultimately I think that just emphasises the fact that Ajax were playing in second gear the whole night, because we scored that goal, and that you could see that pass, as you said, that pass from Tadic was filth. That it was such a good pass, and the boys finished it really well. But am I surprised that it happened? Absolutely not, because I just at times that we've just lacked a real backbone, and it's never something I like leveling at a Rangers team. But and that just summed it up. That goal just summed up. It was a great goal, but it's just really disappointing to lose so quickly after after we've scored in a game.
Yeah, I have to say, that's kind of the last action of the game. Tsakala cuts inside a couple of minutes later and blazes it over the bar. So there's not much more to make on the game. Craig, I'm keen to get your thoughts on that goal. Did you feel similar to Kyle? Were you just scunnered at that point that the team had managed to, claw their way back into the game essentially and just chucked it away within a couple of minutes?
I was scunnered well before that point. I was scunnered about 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, fair.
I was scunnered. So, but no, I think it, like Kyle said, it just summed up our Champions League campaign so far. I'm glad to see the back of the Champions League. I'm glad that we have the money in the bank accounts, although obviously apparently nowhere near as much as we're told everyone else gets. And so I'm glad to see the back of Champions League campaign. I'm not entirely convinced I would bite your hand off to be in the Champions League next year at this stage. I'm not sure how warmly I'd welcome the money. I'm not sure how warmly I'd welcome actually taking part in the competition.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because my dad said exactly the same thing when we were leaving the ground. He said, if we win the league this year, will we go straight into the Champions League? And I said, yeah. And he went, don't want that. Don't want that. So I'm not surprised you feel that way because, yeah, my dad feels exactly the same. But I like it where you've went there and kind of your overall feelings. Before we kind of finalise the game, I am going to ask for a man of the match here because I think it's a good way to maybe try and pick out someone you felt maybe survived the game, I suppose. But I don't want to take too much time here, Kyle, because I know we have a podcast tomorrow and we'll probably summarise the Champions League overall. But, how did you feel at the kind of final whistle tonight? Were you just glad it was done? Time to move on?
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's a real difficult one. I would want us to be in the Champions League again next season. The club that keeps coming up's Club Bruges, and I want us to go down that sort of model. I mean, how are we going to improve if we're not facing these guys week in, week out? Basically, we need to be doing it. I mean, I think Club Bruges had a few batterings, and then you look where they are now. They're playing quite well. So that's the kind of model that I'll be looking at. If you're asking me about a man of a match, I mean, if you had a gun to my head and I had to pick, it would probably be Fashion Sakala. I just thought his work rate was really good at times tonight. I felt he was good at taking on a man. He had it past them. He had passed their left back quite a few times. There was quite a few times where he took it past their left back. I have no idea how he got it past. I was going to say I maybe watch the highlights to see, but I absolutely won't be. And before I go, there's a point here from Curry Muncher. He says, "I hope you guys are discussing, the comments from Tav and G Van Bronckhorst after the post match press conference. None of us have actually had a chance to see any of that stuff yet, but it's something that we will talk about on tomorrow's podcast. I think you're on that with me, Ross. So we'll talk about that then."
Yeah, I'm glad you picked that up because I was going to say exactly the same thing. We'll definitely cover that tomorrow, considering it's midnight as well. So we don't want to keep you all night. We'd have to go find those comments, but we'll give you the final word. Then, Craig, is can you find a man of the match? Is there anyone in particular you felt had a good game, or do you just want to go down the route of tell me who had a bad game? The floor is yours.
So I think I'd agree with Kyle. Fashion Sakala is probably man of the match if we're picking someone from a Rangers perspective. I do really like James Sands when he's on the ball and he's coming out with it at his feet and he drives into that midfield area. He's really positive. He reads the game really well when he's on the ball, and he reads the other team's formation really well as well and their movement. And he always tries to play a forward pass. He's not one of these people who, if he's in that position, he's going from side to side. I think he was part of the reason. He was a big part of the reason as to why we were so good against Aberdeen, and I think we saw some flashes of that tonight. Albeit he was driving in from deeper, and I think Kyle pointed out at one point. I think actually James Sands was trying to play the Calvin Bassey in the Scottish Cup semi-final against Celtic last season role, where Ajax had a man who was dropping from the forward line deep, and James Sands was just following him all the time. And I thought he did really well with that. But obviously, he was playing beside a young Leon King, and he's got responsibilities with that as well. So I thought James Sands showed promise, but I think I'd give man of the match if we had to give one to Fashion Sakala.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think my shouts would probably be the same as you both. I think Fashion Sakala. What I've been really impressed with Fashion Sakala lately is not just ability to beat a man, which is very good, especially for someone so raw. The ability to he runs inside on his left foot, but can still beat a man. He manages to then bend his run into the box. It's really good to watch. But actually, I think his final ball's getting a lot better. Now, it doesn't seem to hit the target every time, but he's definitely putting it in areas now where I feel, there will eventually be someone on the end of it. So Fashion Sakala, again, grabbed that opportunity again tonight. Didn't do anything wrong. But it's difficult. I probably would give it to James Sands, honestly, just because I know he's playing out of position and he just seems to be able to adapt to both roles. Is he great at centre-back? Is he going to play there for the foreseeable? No, but he's stepping in, he's doing it for us. And yeah, I like what I see from James Sands. Would I pay the 5 million? I don't think so. But I'm liking what I'm seeing, and I can understand, the board will probably have a tough decision to make when the summer comes. But anyway, we'll leave it there because I'm conscious of time. And also, I know that we'll be running down most of this tomorrow on the Wednesday bulletin. That'll be there at 7 p.m. I'm sure Kyle will have the agenda for that, but we'll probably go over the kind of Champions League as a whole and how we feel and maybe what we could have done better, which I'm sure there'll be a big list. But of course, yeah, thanks for everyone getting involved. We've seen all the comments. There's been a lot tonight, and yeah, I really appreciate it. So please subscribe to the channel, give us a like if you enjoyed it. You can find us all the normal social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And yeah, we'll be live tomorrow at 7, Friday at 7 as well. And we'll have the Sunday kind of review pod that'll be there at 8 p.m. So all I've got left to do now is thank the guests. So thanks very much at this late hour, Craig. Thank you.
No problem at all. You're getting absolutely slated for your James Sands man of the match shout, give a defender man of the match for a 3-1 defeat. So I'm absolutely slated.
Listen, Wincher has taken the words right out of my mouth. I was just about to say that. You cannot give a defender man of the match.
I always like to try and be a wee bit different with the man of the match. Try and give people a wee bit of focus. But yeah, no, that's fair. Listen, you're probably right. It's probably Fashion Sakala. I'm just trying to be different, right? So we'll go with Fashion Sakala. Okay, Fashion Sakala wins it. But Kyle, thanks for your time. Thank you.
No bother. I was going to say a pleasure as always, but listen, it's been fun talking about us getting humped in Europe so often with you, Ross.
Yeah, me and you are really good at this, actually. We're pretty good at summarising the defeats. I'd love a few victories. I never seem to get scheduled on when it's the victories. I get pulled out for the defeats, so there must be something I'm doing right in terms of defeats anyway. But yeah, thanks everyone for getting involved, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.